What does it mean to have a great heart? Is greatness defined by achievements or by the compassion and love we bring to the world? Let's explore the profound connection between a noble heart and true greatness. Welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. Today we continue the series inspired by the book, The Light Within, a journey through the Axioms of Ashla. I am your host and author of The Light Within, Justin Gates. Today I'm joined by my dear friend, Michael.
Hey guys.
So the axiom of light we'll be talking about today is a great heart achieves greatness. Now, this axiom reveals that greatness is not just a matter of accomplishments or power. It begins with the purity and strength of the heart. A great heart filled with kindness, courage, and integrity creates lasting impact. Does anyone come to mind when we say a great heart achieves greatness? Does anybody come to mind for you? Like just off the top of your head?
Honestly, when you ask that question, I think of you. You've always been someone who's stood for what's right, who's been willing to lend an ear to anyone who's willing to come to you for advice. Another big one is my grandfather. He was my hero growing up, and that man, he would do anything for his neighbor. I saw him help build gardens. Seen him pull off on the side of the street, seeing someone struggle bringing in groceries. That man was all about living in service to others. And he was my greatest inspiration growing up.
I would have loved to have met him. He sounds a lot like my grandfather, who I spent a great deal of time with as I was growing up. He was a tough man. He was a strong man, but he had a pure heart. I mean, pure as gold. And we tend to gravitate towards people like that when we keep that as something, as an important characteristic of a person, something we find to be kind of the utmost important part of them. Would you say we tend to pull people like that in? I mean, I think of you as someone who has enhanced that. And I appreciate your kind words. But we always tend to, I won't say we, but if you ask that question to a lot of people, they would say, oh, George Washington, or oh, Martin Luther King, or they would have these people that are like these pillars of accomplishments, but
Yeah.
they rarely look like right next to them. Like there's the quiet kid in class. That person may have a great heart. A teacher, someone who does an unassuming job somewhere, maybe making your coffee or something. These people are out there, they're everywhere. And although we named our grandfathers, and I think a lot of people probably would agree their grandfathers or grandmothers or moms and dads are probably in there for them, but these people are all around us. There's good people and very unassuming, and they could look very different than what we would expect from a great heart. So
Yes.
I'll pass this to you, and we'll start this off by what defines a great heart? What qualities do people have?
Well, I think for many people, they look at, kind of like you were saying, accomplishments and what is it that brought this person up and what is it that they aspire to do and create. And I think there is some truth in that. But when we look at good people and great hearts, again, that magnetism they have, when you look at who they are as a person and the way they serve the world around them and the people in their lives, you can truly see that they're operating from a place of selflessness. That doesn't mean self abandon, but that does mean that they operate where other people's needs are just as important as theirs. They want to do their best to make an impact on the world in the best way they can. And I think this ties into sort of finding your purpose. When we look for our purpose, we look for areas that call to us. And I think we're in an age where people are being called to help others heal, where great hearts are becoming more and more abundant because people are waking up and realizing that there is so much fulfillment when it comes to being in service to others. I would say even that different types of volunteer work and engagement with the people they love. Again, that magnetism, we all are drawn to people who we feel safe with because there is a part of our nervous system that tells us that someone is safe or not. And it's our intuition talking to us because we will know, because when we are around those kind of people, we will be open, we will be carefree, we will be authentic, opposed to those who may masquerade as otherwise. because there are those who are narcissistic in nature, who are grandiose and come across as too much of a pinnacle of light. And then there's even on the other end of the spectrum where there are those who do act selflessly, but they act selflessly through self abandon, which I think can be ending up being just as dark as the former. But the true balance lies in someone who maybe prioritizes their own needs, but still wants to live in service by others, being 51% selfish and 49% selfless. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. That's a great way to put it. Those people who do it kind of falsely, if you are patient enough, you'll see it. Some of them give it up right away, but the really good ones might take a while. But if you're open and aware, you'll see it. These
And
people that
one
we're
thing to
talking,
ask yourself, one
yeah,
thing
go
I
ahead.
want to throw in there with this is I remember for years, I always had to ask myself that is, am I a good person? I always question that because I had such a big heart, but I never felt like I was giving in a way that was meaningful or that I was connecting like with family. That was one area where I really struggled, where there wasn't great communication and connection with family. And for a lot of people listening, I know there's some that this will resonate with, where you do question if you're a good person, but that is the first sign of being a good person. Again, I was on that other end of the spectrum, being self abandoning to serve others and learning that I needed to serve my own needs before serving others. And if you're willing to question your own morality, you're willing to question your own path, you're doing the work.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. These kind of people that we see, they do have some common traits. They're typically more compassionate. They're typically more kind and generous. But don't let that fool you. That's not a weakness because they're also some of the most resilient people, some of the most brave people, but at the same time, some of the most humble people. People who have a great heart, people who are compassionate yet tough and resilient, kind yet firm, courageous yet wise, humble, but also passionate about what they do and their purpose. And these are all kind of points of balance. We always want balance in our lives. So,
Well, when you talk about resiliency, I mean, one quote that's really stuck with me as I've gone through my trials these last 3 years, from loss to betrayal to seeing people I love suffer, is a strong character and an easy life cannot coexist. And
that's
that
right.
quote has just followed me everywhere. I think about it all the time because it's the truth. Those who are resilient are not born resilient. Some may be, but resilience is something cultivated through suffering, through hardship, through character development. I mean,
Hmm.
there's a saying in the healing community, you either get bitter or you get better.
Yeah, that's another good one. You either get bitter or you get better. And according to our teachings, the more you heal and help heal others, the better you get too, the more healed.
Yes.
So now it's one thing to talk about these great virtues and these great, we call them agreements, courage, humility, generosity. But the people we're talking about are those who have these inner qualities, but they come through in what they do more so than what they say. So when we're talking about cultivating a virtuous character, I would say righteous. Righteous has kind of a negative connotation to it these days, but a virtuous character, hell, sometimes even virtue is seen as bad in this topsy-turvy world, but we don't care about that, right? We keep pushing on. We keep seeking balance through the light. And the light teaches us that we need to be compassionate, we need to be humble, we need to be generous and kind, but also we also need to be tough. We also need to be courageous. We also need to bring hope and inspire hope and be faithful. And really, these people have cultivated these inner virtues through love and service. Basically, as you said, it's a really simple process.
Yeah.
Through love, loving their fellow man, being willing to forgive when asked, not holding on to things that drag us towards a more darker nature. Things like, disdain or anger, you know,
Yeah.
wrath. And if we linger too long in there, those are the things that turn the virtues on them in on themselves. Instead of justice, now you're looking for vengeance. It's these acts of service. Like when I asked you who that remind you of, you mentioned your grandfather, and then you mentioned why. Because he was always there for his neighbors. He was always willing to stick himself out there for the other guy. He was always, and those are acts of love and service for his fellow man. And basically, that's the best way not only to cultivate that stuff within us and also help it bring it out in us, where people can see, but it creates the strongest, the most meaningful, and lasting ties and change in our sphere of influence.
Yeah.
So, of course, because this is the new Ashla show, we're going to connect this to our teachings. This axiom and its message aligns with the virtues of Ashla, as I said, and our philosophy: compassion, nobility, and justice. These are kind of some of the pillars of what holds up everything we do. And there's lots of examples of historical people that we could look to, and that's kind of what we were talking about at the beginning, was how people tend to go to these more historical examples. So, but I like to recognize these kinds of character around me. I like to see it in the people who are around me, because if we're mindful, we could look out at and see the people that all of humankind would agree, yeah, this guy's great, or this lady is awesome. Martin Luther King, or Mother Teresa, or Gandhi, and so on and so forth. All these great hearts that achieved great things through service. But there's so many people around us that are pretty great too. Um, and
Well, I think there's greatness in everyone. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I'm a firm believer. I don't care what religion you are. If you look at Christianity, they talk about the Holy Spirit that's in all of us. You look at spirituality, and it's just spirit. We are all pure, but we're all conditioned by our experiences, beliefs, and our understanding of how the world works. And some of us, when we enter into places of scarcity and survival, it can taint us, but the goodness is in all of us. But it's about removing those layers. And for many people, I mean, for a lot of people listening, you're probably on the path. And if you're on the path, you probably have the gift to see the good in people, because there is so much good in everyone.
mhm.
It's just all about where they're at in life. What lesson is being taught right now? What is this stage of their evolutionary journey, which does not mean they go from the caterpillar to the butterfly and it's over. No, it's a constant death and rebirth. They talk about how when you love someone and you're in their life for a lifetime, you watch them die a death by a thousand deaths. You watch them
Mhm.
be reborn by a thousand deaths. And it's so true.
Well, and you brought up other religions and life paths, philosophies, and stuff. And this is a pretty foundational teaching, I would say, for all of
Yeah.
those. And you were talking about purpose. A lot of them, most of them, and I'll pick on the Stoics because I love the Stoics. They're not fun at parties, but they're wise. Just kind of sit there and stare at you.
Right.
Yeah, they would teach selflessness and service lead you to true fulfillment. That's, as you said earlier, because the Stoics, they say, live virtuously and live in alignment with that higher purpose, and they would go about it through service and selflessness. And that's kind of how they batted it around. I think it's true what you said. When we start having better ideas, better thoughts, we learn better things, and we start practicing those, and eventually those become habits. And those, if practiced consistently, practice, then they do start shining from us, and they do lead us to fulfillment. They do lead us to a purpose.
Percent. I truly think that when we are cultivating our character, there are so many of us where we're struggling along and we have these issues in life, but we know exactly what needs to be done. We're just avoiding it. I heard a quote a while back that I really loved, and it was, "The magic you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding." And it speaks to how, I mean, you're in a bad relationship. Are you having the hard conversations? You would know if you're not. Are you not leaving a situation that you cannot find your peace in? Are you in a job that you can't stand, but you're comfortable and you don't want to have to reacclimate to somewhere new? Is there that business idea you have that You're a little afraid of taking that risk and putting yourself out there and doing the grind.
Yeah.
The magic is in the work you're avoiding, especially when developing a good character.
It's about avoiding pain. That's what we like to do. We like to avoid
Yep.
pain.
And we want to avoid change. We will pick a familiar devil over the unknown.
It's true. That is true. Kind of think of this like when we talk about a great heart, think of the heart as a wellspring of just light that radiates outward. And the more blockages you remove out of its way, the bigger the light gets and the more it's able to shine on others. You know,
Yeah.
it's about doing that inner work and just, we're all a mess. We're all a mess sometimes. And although some of us look really clean, we're still a mess too. And we're dirty and it's a lifetime practice of scrubbing the lens, right?
Yeah.
And allowing that light to shine more and more and more. In this case, with the metaphor, in this case, it's about doing the work and putting yourself out there and serving. And you could serve in lots of different ways. What kinds of things can we do to practice this axiom and to help our heart reach greatness?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, ask yourself, where is your heart? Is your heart strong in wanting to empower the world, or is your heart weak? Is it struggling right now because of its own struggles? It's all about meeting yourself where you are at. And when you meet yourself where you are at, you can then begin to build a foundation of trust within yourself. Start taking steps to cultivate that self trust, whether they need to be small or they need to be big. But you have to be honest with yourself and where you're at. And when you look at the things you want to accomplish, most things you care about in life stem from love. Whether it's you want to find love, whether it is you want to protect your family, everything stems from love. But the path to get there, you may be your own obstacle. With through self-awareness and compassion and understanding with yourself, you can cultivate unconditional love for yourself and then in turn for others. Because more often than not, when you see people who do not have a strong heart and are full of anger and rage, it's due to the lack of love they're giving themselves. And I truly think the best place to start is to really sit with yourself and ask, how much am I contributing to my sphere of influence, my family, the people around me, my friends? Am I someone who complains? Am I someone who constantly looks for the negative? Or am I someone who's trying to find the good in any situation? Am I trying to strive to achieve these goals that the group has? Or am I acting in self-interest? Which sometimes you may need to do depending on the groups you hang out with. But I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, because a lot of these things are perpetual cycles that we are born into and that we adopt or that we are gifted with. And you take enough crap from your environment, it will change you. But the good news is you can change yourself from there too. You can get better. You can get through it. Lots of us do. That kind of brings me to a point that oftentimes the greatest amongst us, the greatest amongst humankind, are those who endured the pain, endured the momentary pain for the long-term greatness. I've never seen anybody just born great. Even Michael Jordan had to work his behind off for thousands and thousands and thousands of hours just shooting baskets and jumping. And I know he makes it look easy, right? He makes it look so
Yeah,
damn easy.
seriously.
But none of us seen him growing up. That's the people who watched him grow up knew what he went through and knew how no one's born great. It's something we have to achieve, but it doesn't mean it. And by the way, it's not impossible. Some of the
Well, one
best
thing I
people
want
I
to
know.
add to what you're saying.
Yeah,
Go ahead and finish your tangent.
I was going to say the best people I know from every pocket and corner of life are people who endured the suck long enough and had that self-love and that self-awareness, and they just kept grinding and grinding and grinding, and they kept doing the good thing. I'll share something with you without a lot of great detail because it's still kind of a thing in my life here. But on Monday, I came home from work and I was not happy. I was not happy about how some things were going. I was not happy about some things that I thought was done kind of shady. And I'll leave it at that. But I came home and I said, why do I keep taking why do I have to keep taking the high road? Why do I have to be the one that takes all the crap? that has to take out the trash, that has to deal with the hard stuff. And that's not just at work, that's just in life. People like us who purposely go out of our way to serve and purposely go out of our way to ensure others are taken care of and are, yeah. But I asked this question of Heather, and it was a genuine question. Why do I keep doing this? Well, I keep doing this because somebody has to do it. Somebody has to stand up for others. Somebody has to help people up off the ground when they've fallen. Some people have to enforce other people's boundaries for them. People have to protect them from others who would seek to harm them. It's just what we have to do. It sucks. It sucks because it seems like people who don't act that way and people who are the opposite of what I'm talking about seem to get everything they want. They seem to get away with everything, right? You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I would completely agree.
Yeah. So it's my point is, and I'm not calling myself a great heart. You called me a great heart, so I'm going to use that because somebody has to. Not only does somebody have to, but the long term win by taking the high road and the long term win by doing the right thing and maintaining a strong character and a strong integrity and standing up is far greater reward than the momentary little tiny wins that people get when they don't do the right thing, and they seem to be getting away with it because they don't get away with it forever. So what were you going to say?
Well, I was just gonna, I mean, one, to what you're saying there, back to the quote, a strong character and an easy life cannot coexist. And I think for a lot of people who are going through the trenches of the struggle and trying to build themselves up, self-compassion, you hear all these stories of people who overcame adversity, who fought these wars, who are great people, but they don't talk much about what it looked like when they were in the thick of it. It is not pretty. It can be ugly when you're trying to get yourself out of a place or trying to cultivate or build something. You will stumble, you will fall, you will have blood on your hands. And it's okay to stumble, to fall, as long as you pick yourself back up.
Or have people around you that can.
Yeah. As long as you're willing to let them in. I've met so many people who are so walled off and they don't want to be vulnerable, and I get it. You don't want to be a burden to others. But if you're wanting to carry the weight of the world, there's no way you can without using the shoulders of those you care about that you trust, who want to help you do the same thing. We are all human.
Well, and whether you like it or not, we're all in this together, every single one of us.
Yeah,
Whether you like it or not, I
100%.
don't know what to tell you. If you don't like that, I take it up with the universe. Take it up with, if you believe in a creator, take it up with the creator. I don't know what to tell you. We're all interconnected, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I don't like it sometimes either, because sometimes I don't want help. You ever met a toddler? Anybody out there ever met a toddler that you're trying to help do something very simple, and I don't want your help. I don't want your help. I don't want your help. Well, sometimes you just help them because if not, they're going to explode or something. But other times you just let them. You let them do it because you're like, all right, this is about to become a disaster for you. But since you don't want my help, I'm going to let you do it.
And that's one of those things of picking your battle. Some people want to drown in their own struggles, and you got to realize it's not your job to save people. And that's one thing I think a lot of people with good hearts get caught up in. You can't, if someone's drowning and doesn't want a helping hand, you're going to be dragged in there with them.
All right, let's move on to our exercise for the day. Did you have anything else before we move on to the exercise?
No, I think we covered this point beautifully. It's such an important axiom because obviously, if you're listening to this, you're wanting to do good in the world. You're wanting to have a good heart and do the best you can, and you got to start there. We are where we're at, and we're human, but it's a beautiful thing when love is what guides us, and having that good heart to do good by others and to create the best world we can with what we got.
So our exercise today is going to be called the Heart-Centered Action Plan. Reflect on one way you can show greatness of heart today. It could be a random act of kindness, reaching out to someone in need, or simply practicing forgiveness. Write down how this action aligns with your values and how it makes you feel. And if you need to make adjustments there, then make adjustments, because the way I approach this exercise is going to be different than Michael and you, whoever else participates in it. It's going to be This does remind me one thing real quick before we move on to the affirmation and journal prompt. Much like generosity, and we'll talk about generosity throughout the life of this podcast, however many thousand years it goes on. And you and I are just little heads in a jar, and we're just doing this forever. Just like generosity. Some people believe generosity is just simply giving, 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 giving. And that's usually time or money. But being generous is much more than just giving money time. It is sitting with someone for 5 minutes because they need a shoulder to cry on. It is teaching somebody a new skill. It can be, of course, paying for someone's meal, helping somebody. It's just an extra act of kindness, basically, generosity. So some of that's free. You don't have to be a millionaire to be generous. Just like with having a great heart, you don't have to go out and do these grand acts of these grand gestures that, of compassion and all this and that. Sometimes it's simply just forgiving someone. Sometimes it's simply just forgiving yourself.
I
So
think
I just,
forgiveness is something very important to be out in the world. It's something that's much needed and is not as available as many feel.
no, it's not because it's hard. It's hard for people to get out of their own way. I was talking with someone today about when ego becomes a prison, when ego becomes a shell, and it becomes like this energetic prison, and people don't realize they're trapped. People don't realize that they're trapped in their own prison, and that their ego is the warden and their ego is the judge, and you're never getting out of that prison until you stand up. Stand up to yourself and stand up to those parts of yourself and demand to be released and demand to not be judged anymore. Forgiveness is hard, and that's hard too.
Forgiveness has been a big part of my path. I think one of the important things to remember when it comes to forgiveness is forgiveness, as much as it is for the other person, it's for us, is the real reason we need to practice forgiveness. If someone has trespassed against you, if someone is acting out of alignment for their greater good or yours, forgiveness isn't for them, it is for you.
That's right.
And
You're not doing it for their sake, especially someone who caused you a great deal of trauma, especially someone who not only trespassed against you but hurt you and hurt you in ways that we can never explain over the air. But that forgiveness is not for them. You have to forgive yourself
yeah,
and forgive on your behalf. That's something that Heather and I have been going through for the last probably two years now, 2 or 3 years, 2.5 years maybe. Was that she was finally ready to face a lot of her trauma, and she's got a lot of it. There's a ton of it, and this, Michael. I'm just kind of sharing for the folks that we've been working on this stuff, but but the biggest part of it was forgiveness, allowing her not to forgive the people that did the things to her per se, but symbolically set that weight down, that weight that's on her shoulders and on her neck and on her head and on her heart and on her soul. That's that actually kind of reminds me to say this too also, is when you're building your strength of character and your greatness of heart, you got to move those weights off of you too. You can't be carrying that stuff around. But
yeah,
a lot of it's forgiveness, and that's really been, excuse me, the biggest part of her healing journey and the biggest part of her success in that. Little by little, one thing at a time. Once she works through it, then she forgives herself. She forgives and she removes those weights off her, and then she steps a little lighter and on to the next thing. So, forgiveness is probably the biggest thing in all things, right? I mean, it's
yeah. I mean, forgiveness has been such a big part of my journey. And one of the important things with forgiveness is it's not something you can force. You can't just, okay, you know what? I understand. I'm dropping it. I mean, you do, but to emotionally feel that release, to truly forgive, it takes time. It takes patience. One important piece of advice I want to give everybody, because this has been a huge part of my journey, is part of forgiveness is the story you tell yourself about the events you've been through. And if you look at a lot of your trauma, you look at a lot of things holding you back, you'll realize there's a lot of stories you're telling yourself that are guiding your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. There's an emotional charge when someone trespasses on us and it is not dealt with or handled in a way that we feel just, I think would probably be the word for it. There's emotional residue inside of us. That anger, that hatred, it's an accumulation, and you can feed that fire. Depending on the story you're telling yourself, you can make things 1,000 times worse. You can also make things 1,000 times better. The more you give grace to humanity and to the journey and to the life you want to live, because people show us their place in our lives. And when they do, We need to take them seriously.
Yeah, people will show you who they are, and you need to take them seriously. We can't pretend forever. For the sake of some uniformity here, let me give you that quick exercise again, and then we'll move on.
Yep.
The exercise, the heart-centered action plan. Reflect on one way you can show greatness of heart today, be it a random act of kindness, reaching out to someone in need, or simply practicing forgiveness. Write down what you experienced and write down what you did and kind of explore that and do some introspection. Use that as a writing meditation. You may discover things that you didn't quite see before. Our affirmation for the day: my heart is a wellspring of compassion and courage. I achieve greatness by acting with love, kindness, and integrity. For my favorite people in the world, my journalers, you know how much I love you guys. I have a journaling prompt for you. Reflect on someone in your life who embodies a great heart. What qualities do they have? And how have they inspired you? How can you bring those qualities into your own actions? And our question of the day: what does it mean to you? Man, I wrote this really horribly. What does it mean to you to have a great heart? Share an experience where kindness or courage helped you or someone else achieve greatness. Blah. Using hashtag #GreatHeartGreatness. And as always, we'd like to encourage you to share stories of acts of kindness. Share your stories on the topic today. Go out to your orders and your corners of the internet where you love the most and share and bring these topics up and talk about them, and you'll learn a lot about each other. You really will. If you have any questions or comments, always feel free to reach out to me on Facebook. I'm easy to find. You can find us pretty much anywhere. Just type in my name. You can actually, if you're listening to this on Spotify, you can actually leave us comments, which is kind of cool. So,
Do it up.
yeah, yeah. So, before we wrap up, I have one more thing for you. The axiom that we were talking about today: a great heart achieves greatness. Such a seemingly simple and obvious, yet profound truth. Greatness springs from the depths of a great heart. The purity of one's intentions, the nobility of one's character, and the boundless capacity for compassion define the true measure of greatness. A great heart is the embodiment of light. Someone who embodies the virtues of compassion, empathy, and selflessness are generally humble and forthright. They are people who put the needs of others before themselves more often and serve in a loving and kind manner. A great heart is willing to see the good in people and offers forgiveness when asked. Greatness is found in acts of selflessness, the capacity to bring comfort and solace to others, and the ability to live in harmony with the force and life itself. Our luminari strive to achieve great heights atop a great heart. They encourage others to take the high road instead of the easy one. They bring solace when chaos reigns. They help bring peace and safety to others. They help grow their souls by pointing them toward right action and charity. They pick others back up when they fall short with a helping hand. I encourage your heart to be a wellspring of love, kindness, and empathy, for it is through these qualities that you enrich your soul and touch the lives of those around you. In the cultivation of a great heart, you become a source of inspiration and a positive change in the world. I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. With love and gratitude, Ad Lucium.
Ad Lucium.